Therefore, please precisely describe all the activities and pastimes of the personality of God, who is full of self-desire and who assumes all these activities by his internal potency. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The word anukirtaya is very important. It is very significant, excuse me. Anukirtaya means to follow the description, not to create a concocted mental description, but to follow. Sonaka Rishi requested Sutta Goswami to describe what he had actually heard. Okay, anyway, let me read the verse first. Therefore, please precisely describe all the activities and pastimes of the personality of Godhead, who is full of self-desire and who assumes all these activities by his internal potency. The word anukirtaya is very significant. Anukirtaya means to follow the description, not to create a concocted mental description, but to follow. Janaka Rishi requested Sutta Goswami to describe what he had actually heard from his spiritual master, Sukadeva Goswami, about the transcendental pastimes the Lord manifested by his internal energy. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has no material body, but he can assume any kind of body by his supreme will. That is made possible by his internal energy. Okay. So now we're going to hear from this point on all the activities and pastimes of the personality of Godhead. Okay. So text number 4. Sri Sutta Goswami said, the most powerful sage Maitreya was a friend of Vyasadeva. Being encouraged and pleased by Vidura's inquiry about transcendental knowledge, Maitreya spoke as follows. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Questions and answers are very satisfactorily dealt with when the inquirer is bona fide and the speaker is also authorized. Here, Maitreya is considered a powerful sage. Therefore, he is also described as Bhagavan. This word can be used not only for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but for anyone who is almost as powerful as the Supreme Lord. Maitreya is addressed as Bhagavan because he was spiritually far advanced. He was a person, he was a personal friend of Dvaipayana Vyasadeva, a literary incarnation of the Lord. Maitreya was very pleased with the inquiries of Vidura because they were the inquiries of a bona fide advanced devotee. Thus, Maitreya was encouraged to answer. When there are discourses on transcendental topics between devotees of equal mentality, the questions and answers are very fruitful and encouraging. So now we see that the Vedic knowledge is attained by questions and answers. So therefore, when someone is giving a class, at one point they'll say, are there any questions? If everybody stays quiet, well, then not going to be any answers. So it's very important that we ask questions. And it says here in the first line of the purport, questions and answers are very satisfactorily dealt with when the inquirer is bona fide and the speaker is also authorized. So if you have no questions, well, you're not going to get any answers, and that means you're not going to learn anything. But if you ask a question, then you have a good chance of learning something. So the whole Vedic, let's say, knowledge is about questions and answers, questions about the activities and pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and answers given by bona fide devotees. And Prabhupada says here, questions and answers are very satisfactorily dealt with when the inquirer is bona fide and the speaker is also authorized. So the person asking the questions and the person answering the questions, they both have to be authorized. That means that they are devotees and they're following the regulative principles, and the person that's asking questions uh, is surrendered. He's completely surrendered to Krishna and his guru, and the person answering the questions is a bona fide spiritual master. Now the questions and answers are going to be significant, and this is how we learn. When we hear the questions and answers between a bona fide devotee and a bona fide spiritual master. There are questions and answers also, like, for example, uh, you have a court, and they are in session, and the judge is asking some questions, and uh, uh, the defendant is answering them. But that's not spiritual. That is something that is mundane. But when there are questions and answers between a bona fide devotee and a bona fide disciple, now the questions and answers are both very significant. So let me read this purport again. It says, questions and answers are very satisfactorily dealt with when the inquirer is bona fide and the speaker is also authorized. Here, Maitreya is considered a powerful sage, and therefore he is also described as Bhagavan. This word can be used not only for the spiritual Supreme Personality of Godhead, but for anyone who is almost as powerful as the Supreme Lord. Maitreya is addressed as Bhagavan because he was spiritually far advanced. He was a personal friend of Dvaipayana Vyasadeva, a literary incarnation of the Lord. Maitreya was very pleased with the inquiries of Vidura because they were the inquiries of a bona fide advanced devotee. Thus, Maitreya was encouraged to answer. When there are discourses on transcendental topics between devotees of equal mentality, the questions and answers are very fruitful and encouraging. Okay, so that's why oftentimes the speaker will also say, are there any questions? And if everybody stays silent, then there's not going to be any answers. But if the listeners ask questions, that means that, and these questions are serious questions, that means that the uh, speaker is very pleased, and the hearer will be very pleased also by the answers. Pleased in the sense that you learn something and you get things clarified so you don't have a misconception. And it's very easy to have misconceptions if you don't ask questions. That's why people ask questions. They want to make sure they've heard correctly. And obviously, it's easy to make mistakes if you have not heard correctly. So there's always the possibility of validating what you've heard by asking a question. Okay, so text number four, number five, sorry, text number five. And it says, Maitreya said, when Kardama left for the forest, Lord Kapila stayed on the strand of the Bindu Sarovara to please his mother, Devahuti. Strand, what does that mean? Strand. He stayed on the strand of the Bindu Sarovara, I guess on the edge of it.
Yeah.
Strand.
Basically, it's like a single thin length of something such as a thread or
Yeah.
yeah, it's like a small
Okay.
bank basically.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the absence of the father, it is the duty of the grown son to take charge of his mother and serve her to the best of his ability, so that she will not feel separation from her husband. And it is the duty of the husband to leave home as soon as there is a grown son to take charge of his wife and family affairs. That is the Vedic system of household life. One should not remain continually implicated in household affairs up to the time of death. He must leave. Family affairs and the wife may be taken charge of by a grown son. Well, the question can be asked, what if there's no grown son? What if there's no son? Sometimes you have a family where there are only daughters that are born. So then you take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. We should always take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, but especially if there's no grown son to protect the mother, then for she should take complete shelter of the bona fide spiritual master or spiritual masters, because there are many bona fide spiritual masters. Uh, and here the statement again is said, one should not remain continually implicated in household affairs up to the time of death. He must leave. Family affairs and the wife may be taken, he must leave. Family affairs and the wife may be taken charge of by a grown son. Okay. In the case where there's no grown son, then the mother will be taken care of by the association of devotees and the spiritual master. Okay, text number 6. When Kapila, who could show her the ultimate goal of the absolute truth, was sitting leisurely before her, Devahuti. Before her, Devahuti remembered the words Brahma had spoken to her, and she therefore began to question Kapila as follows. Devahuti said, I am very sick of the disturbance caused by my material senses. For because of this sense disturbance, my Lord, I have fallen into the abyss of ignorance. Well, this is the mother speaking to her son. And after her husband has left to for the forest, or in other words, for uh, performance of tapasya. So now she's taking shelter of her own son. And she's saying, I'm very sick of the disturbance caused by my material senses. For because of this sense disturbance, my lords, I have fallen into the abyss of ignorance. Okay, purport by Srila Prabhupada. Here, the word asat indriya tarsanat is significant. Asat means impermanent, temporary, and indriya means senses. Thus, asat indriya tarsanat means from beginning, from being agitated by the temporarily manifest senses of the material body. We are evolving through different statuses of material bodily existence, sometimes in a human body, sometimes in an animal body. And therefore, the engagements of our senses are also changing. Anything which changes is called temporary or asat. We should know that beyond these temporary senses are our permanent senses, which are now covered by the material body. The permanent senses, being contaminated by matter, are not acting properly. Devotional service, therefore, involves freeing the senses from this contamination. When the contamination is completely removed and the senses act in the purity of unalloyed Krishna consciousness, we have reached Stad Indriya, or eternal sensory activities. Eternal sensory activities are called devotional service, whereas temporary sensory activities are called sense gratification. Unless one becomes tired of material sense gratification, there is no opportunity to hear transcendental messages from a person like Kapila. Devahuti expressed that she was tired. Now that her husband had left home, she wanted to get relief by hearing the instructions of Lord Kapila, who is her son. Okay. Then uh, uh, then she continues, Your Lordship is my only means of getting out of this darkest region of ignorance, because you are my transcendental eye, which by your mercy only I have attained after many, many births. This verse is very instructive, since it indicates the relationship between the spiritual master and the disciple. The disciple or conditioned soul is put into this darkest region of ignorance, and therefore is entangled in the material existence of sense gratification. It is very difficult to get out of this entanglement and attain freedom. But if one is fortunate enough to get the association of a spiritual master like Kapila Muni or his representative, then by his grace, one can be delivered from the mire of ignorance. The spiritual master is therefore worshipped as one who delivers the disciple from the mire of ignorance with the light of the torch of knowledge. The word paragram is very significant. Paragram refers to one who can take the disciple to the other side. This side is conditioned life. The other side is the life of freedom. The spiritual master takes the disciple to the other side by opening his eyes with knowledge. We are suffering simply because of ignorance. By the instruction of the spiritual master, the darkness of ignorance is removed, and thus the disciple is enabled to go to the side of freedom. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that after many, many births, one surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, if after many, many births, one is able to find a bona fide spiritual master and surrender to such a bona fide representative of Krishna, one can be taken to the side of light. So it's always interesting to hear the concept of light and ignorance. The light of spiritual knowledge liberates one, and the darkness of ignorance keeps one a victim of Maya. So, what is the difference between sense gratification that is abominable and sense gratification that is acceptable? Well, uh, we know more or less what it means. The sense gratification that's abominable. It's illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, meat eating, and so forth. But we still have senses, and the senses have to be satisfied also but instead of by sense gratification, it should be by engagement in devotional service. When we engage the senses in devotional service, it's different than engaging the senses in sense gratification. So, but we can never deny the actions of the senses. If you deny the actions of the senses, it's like being dead. But if you use the senses in the service of Krishna, and what kind of service? Pleasing the senses of Krishna, using our senses to please the senses of Krishna, now we are using the senses correctly. And that's what devotional service is. We're pleasing the senses of Krishna. Mm. And it's not remaining silent like the Mayavadis, or meditating on nothing, or meditating on the tip of your nose. That is not devotional service. Devotional service is basically using our senses to please the senses of Krishna. That's what deity worship is. You're pleasing the senses of the deity by chanting, by bathing, by dressing, and so forth. So the life of a devotee is not engaging in sense gratification for themselves, but rather engaging in pleasing the senses of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or the deity of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there is sense gratification. It's pleasing the senses of Krishna. And if you please Krishna, then you'll be also pleased. But how do you please Krishna? You please his senses by chanting nicely and by making offerings to the Lord, glorifying the Lord, and and associating with positive, let's say, thoughts about the Lord and so forth. So uh, there's always going to be sense gratification, but instead of using our senses for our own selfish sense gratification, we use our senses to please the senses of Krishna. He has eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin, and so forth, but they're transcendental, they're not mundane. So here we see why there are deities in Krishna conscious temples. If you go to the Baha'i temple, or you go to the Mayavadi temples, or you go to a Muslim temple, there's no deity and there's no senses to be pleased. Therefore, they don't really understand who God is. They talk about God, but they don't really understand who God is, and they don't really understand how to please God. Uh, but when you actually have the deity of Krishna and you please the deity of Krishna by dressing him and undressing him and bathing him and uh, chanting for him and so forth, now it becomes personal. Uh, the impersonal worship is incomplete and oftentimes faulty. In other words, full of faults. So, uh, therefore, in order to help someone actually understand that God is a person and not some kind of it, there's a deity of the Lord. And there's properly installing the deity with the Pratishta ceremony, in which we invite the Lord to be in the uh, deity form in the temple. And then we begin regulated devotional service to the deity. This makes everything very real. Uh, but if you go to a Mayavadi so-called temple or a Muslim so-called temple, you're not going to see any deity. It's a little bit shocking. I mean, one time I went to a uh, Baha'i uh, temple. There was nothing. It was empty. You know, I was thinking to myself, where's the deity? They don't worship a deity. And the same thing, you go to a mosque, there's no deity. There's a little plaque on the wall that indicates what the direction of Mecca is, and they just face that uh, sign on the wall, and then they pray and they bow down, but they're not bowing down exactly to God. They're bowing down to the direction of Mecca. Well, they could say, no, no, we are worshiping God, but they don't really understand who God is. Therefore, they've built this whole process of worship to something impersonal. They don't really have a personal relationship with God. They have a concept, uh, and that is impersonal. So they are more interested in facing Makkah than facing the personality of God. So, uh, although there's nothing wrong with worshiping in general, but uh, it is incomplete worship. Just like when you have, let's say, a relative who is sick, you sometimes you massage their body, sometimes you cook for them, sometimes you help them eat, and all these things that are based on service for the person that you love. Well, when you don't have any knowledge of the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they don't do any of those things of offering food. By the way, do the Muslims offer food to Allah? I mean, in Krishna consciousness, we offer food to the deities, right? Do they do that?
I don't think so. They in fact say that, how can your God eat food? I think so.
They offer food
Yeah.
to people, but not to God. Yeah, go ahead.
Muslims do not offer food to Allah in the same way that some other religions may offer physical items to deities. Instead, they offer prayers, gratitude, and obedience. The concept of sacrifice in Islam, such as during Eid al-Adha, Eid al-Adha, involves slaughtering of the animal, sheep, goat, cow, but the meat is shared among family, neighbors, and poor. It is seen as an act of charity and devotion, not as a literal offering of food to Allah.
It's complete nonsense. Complete nonsense. You think Allah is pleased by slaughtering cows and lambs and whatever? It's uh, when you have Ramadan. I mean, after it's over, there's gigantic slaughter of animals, especially sheep and cows, and they, how can you call that religion? I mean, it's sacrilegious to do that. But anyway, they think it's religion. Just like one time there was this American guy, and one of his coworkers was a Muslim, and uh, the during the Ramadan period, um, as soon as it ended, the Muslim man was talking to the American guy and said that, "Oh, our Ramadan was wonderful, and at the end we killed so many cows and animals, and God was pleased." In other words, the more animals they kill, apparently they think God is pleased, right? And they said, and this year we killed more than any other year. So once you look that up, at the end of Ramadan, they have a massive feast where they kill a lot of animals, including cows. It's good to know these things, so you understand what the difference is between Islam and Krishna consciousness. See, now the Christians, they perform the Eucharist, and the Eucharist is symbolically uh, accepting the flesh and the blood of Jesus who died on the cross, right?
Mm. So here it says, actually not at the end of Ramadan. At the end of Ramadan, Muslims celebrate Eid al-Fitr, which is a festive holiday, but it does not involve the sacrifice of animals. Instead, Eid al-Fitr is marked by prayers, feasting, and giving charity, Zakat al-Fitr, which ensures that those in need can also participate in the celebrations. Animal sacrifice typically occurs during the Eid al-Adha, which takes place about 2 months after Eid al-Fitr, during the Hajj pilgrimage. Eid al-Adha commemorates the willingness of Prophet Abraham to sacrifice his son as an act of obedience to God. Muslims who can afford it will sacrifice an animal such as sheep, goat, cow, or camel and distribute the meat to family and friends and the poor. The sacrifice symbolizes generosity and helping those less fortunate.
So at the end of Ramadan, they don't eat cows.
Doesn't seem like according to this at the end of the Ramadan. It's the 2 months when the Hajj pilgrimage starts. That's when they do a big sacrifice.
At the end of the Hajj,
The beginning of the Hajj.
the beginning. All right. Well, anyway, they do sacrifice animals, especially even cows.
Yeah. It's a
And
sheep, goat, cow, camel.
And that's not at the end of Ramadan, but at other
Just 2 months after that.
2 months after that. Okay. But what do they do at the end of Ramadan?
They said it's just marked by prayers, feasting, and giving
What do
charity.
they feast on?
That's a good question. Kind of feast.
Dates?
Sweet dishes, sheer, kurma, is a milk based. So there's a bunch of sweet dishes. Then, yeah. So there is biryani.
Oh, biryani. That's meat.
Kebabs.
Yes. It says kebab, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
grilled meats.
What?
Meats, basically.
Grilled meats. Okay.
Yeah, so they do eat meat, but it's not probably, sacrifice where like they're sharing with other people. Like I think in the Eid al-Adha, they're doing that in a big way.
Mhm. Okay, so they're meat eaters, that's for sure.
Yeah, they do eat even during the Ramadan every night. There also they eat meat.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you say that?
Yeah, yesterday or day before yesterday when we read it,
Yeah.
yeah, it's clearly said like even during
Ramadan.
Ramadan, every night after sunset they do eat.
Well, there you are, ladies and gentlemen. It shows you that uh, they don't have really bona fide gurus. Therefore, they haven't learned to stop eating meat. And because of that, um, there's a lot of violence in Islam.
Mm.
Okay, so here it says the spiritual master takes the disciple to the other side by opening his eyes with knowledge. We are suffering simply because of ignorance. By the instruction of the spiritual master, the darkness of ignorance is removed, and thus the disciple is enabled to go to the side of freedom. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that after many, many births, one surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, if after many, many births, one is able to find a bona fide spiritual master and to surrender to such a bona fide representative of Krishna, one can be taken to the side of light. Okay, so although the Muslims are worshiping Allah, their knowledge of Allah is incomplete, and their worship of Allah is not what you would call, pure. They're still engaged in a lot of sensual activities, especially killing animals. Let's not even talk about cows. They kill other animals also, uh, and they have festivals where the more animals they kill, they consider it. They consider that God is pleased because this year after Ramadan we killed 10,000 animals. They think that's a big success, but actually it's a big abomination. Abomination. Okay, that's not only the Muslims. There are others also, like Christians. What do Christians eat uh, during Lent? Lent is 40 days that Christians should fast. But what do they eat during the 40-day fast? Leading up to Christmas. And what is Christmas? It celebrates uh, if I'm not mistaken, is when Jesus was crucified on the cross.
Hmm. So they do abstain from meat, apparently.
It says that in
During Lent, many Christians, especially those in the Catholic and Orthodox traditions, observe dietary restrictions as a form of penance and spiritual discipline. The specific foods eaten and avoided can vary depending on the tradition, but here are some common practices. Abstinence from meat. Many Christians abstain from eating meat, especially red meat and poultry on Fridays during Lent.
one day, one day in a week.
Fish is typically allowed and is often
What is?
fish is allowed.
Oh, they'll eat fish. Okay.
In some cases, especially on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday, stricter fasting is observed where only one main meal is allowed and no meat is consumed. Fish and seafood. Fish becomes a common replacement to meat, particularly on Fridays. Dishes like grilled fish, all are popular. Seafood such as shrimp, crab, shellfish may be consumed.
Ooh, all horrible things. Yeah, so they're still eating meat. They're just not eating meat from cows and animals. They're eating from fish.
Yeah.
Fish Friday. They can't stop eating flesh. It's amazing, amazing. And there are Christians, some Christians that don't eat meat. They're vegetarians, but they're few and far, uh, and there are not many. But and you have some Christian sects like the Benediction, uh, Benedictine monks that refrain from eating meat. But that's very small, number of Christians that do that. Most Christians just eat meat all day long, you know. And the more you eat, the more you feel, that you've made some spiritual advancement, like the Muslim. Okay, so we will continue on text 9. Is that right? Text 9.
X9, yes.
Yeah. And it says, "You are the supreme personality Godhead, the origin and supreme Lord of all living entities. You have arisen to disseminate the rays of the sun in order to dissipate the darkness of the ignorance of the universe." Well, that's what's going on. This darkness. Um, Devahuti is speaking to her son, Gardama Kapila Muni, and it says in the purport, Kapila Muni is accepted as an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of God, Krishna. Here, the word Adya means the origin of all living entities, and Pumsam Ishwara means the Lord, Ishwara, of the living entities. Ishwara Parama Krishna. Kapila Muni is the direct expansion of Krishna, who is the son, of spiritual knowledge, meaning the light of spiritual knowledge. As the sun dissipates the darkness of the universe, so when the light of the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes down, it at once dissipates the darkness of Maya. We have our own eyes, but without the light of the sun, our eyes are of no value. Similarly, without the light of the Supreme Lord, or without the divine grace of the spiritual master, one cannot see things as they are. Well, this could be uh, applied to the Christians and the Muslims. They do not see things as they are. It could apply to devotees also who deviate from Krishna consciousness, not seeing things as they are. So when you see a cow, like for example, oftentimes I do get calls from Muslims who want to purchase a cow because they read that, I have a farm. They'll call and they'll ask, do you have cow? They say, yes. I said, how much is cow? I said, I don't sell it. Why you don't sell them? I want to buy a cow. I said, we don't sell cows. We protect cows. Why you do that? I give you good money for the cow. It's shocked, that when I say we don't sell cows, we protect them. Uh, so, they're looking for, a cow and they want to buy one, a whole one, and slaughter it. Right? That's what they do. They're not only the Muslims, Christians do it also. Most of the Christians are meat eaters. And, like on Thanksgiving, they eat, hundreds and millions of uh, turkeys. And they celebrate, thank you, God, Thanksgiving, thank you, God. And they kill all these poor turkeys.
Now everything is Maharaj exactly opposite, like
Yeah,
other side, exactly other side. And people follow because everyone is following. Other people also think, okay, oh, maybe this is the right thing to follow.
exactly.
Bigger crowd is following.
Exactly.
Exactly.
You know how many turkeys they sell for Thanksgiving? I mean, it's a huge number, 60 million or something like that, turkeys.
Yeah, that too. Probably much more than that.
Maybe, yeah. And then you wonder why there's war, so much war, why there's so much violence. Uh,
Yeah, you're right. About 46 million, it's
okay, 46 million turkeys are slaughtered on Thanksgiving by the Christians.
and of the total annual 245 million.
Right. It's a big number.
Just one day they kill 46, but then throughout the year they eat about 245 million times.
Wow. Then there's fish, then there's cows, so many other animals that they're killing and eating. It's really, a slaughter. Okay, so this text 9, just read the purport again. Uh, First of all, the translation. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the origin and Supreme Lord of all living entities. You have arisen to disseminate the rays of the sun in order to dissipate the darkness of the ignorance of the universe. Kapila Muni is accepted as an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Here, the word Adya means the origin of all living entities. And Pumsam Ishwara means the Lord, Ishwara, of the living entities. Ishwara Parama Krishna. Kapila Muni is the direct expansion of Krishna, who is the sun meaning S-U-N, not S-O-N, the sun of spiritual knowledge. As the sun dissipates the darkness of the universe, so when the light of the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes down, it at once dissipates the darkness of Maya. We have our eyes, but without the light of the sun, our eyes are of no value. Similarly, without the light of the Supreme Lord or without the divine grace of the spiritual master, one cannot see things as they are. Well, there you have it. You know, the Muslims are not seeing things as they are. The Christians are not seeing things as they are. Are you actually pleasing God by slaughtering turkeys and chickens and cows and so forth? No. And it's a shame. So, like, for example, when, let's see, geez, God, you have uh, Abraham was going to sacrifice his son.
Mm.
Uh, and he was ready to do it. And at the last minute, God stopped him. Right? Look that up.
Because that's what they're using to justify all this sacrifice.
Yeah. So instead of sacrificing the son, now the child, they sacrifice cows and sheep and different things like that.
But why does he need to sacrifice even the son? Like, what is the
Uh,
instinct?
no, God asked him to do it to test
Uh,
him to see if he was actually completely surrendered. And at the last minute, God stopped him. And now instead of sacrificing his son, now they sacrifice many animals, the Christians and the Jews.
Did God ask to sacrifice
The son.
animals instead of son, or how come this animal thing came into the picture?
Well, you got to sacrifice something, right?
Here, according to the scriptures of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, God asked Abraham to sacrifice his son as a test of faith.
Right.
In Hebrew Bible, Old Testament, the story is found in Genesis 22. God commands Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac. As Abraham is about to obey, an angel of God intervenes and provides a ram to sacrifice instead.
A lamb.
Ram.
A ram. Yeah.
Ram.
That's where it's coming from. Nice. And they're doing it today, big time. Very big time. That's not only the Muslims, right? Is it
All three religions.
all three religions?
Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
Yeah, there you are. And they're all basically the same religion. There's not big difference between the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims. They're all Abrahamic religions. They all consider Abraham as their father, the original father. And whatever happened to Abraham, they celebrated. So he was tested by God to sacrifice his son. And at the last minute, God stopped that and they let him sacrifice a lamb or a goat or something instead of his son. Yeah. So you see, the Abrahamic religion, uh, you know, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity are all related because they all accept Abraham as the original so-called father, and whatever happened, in ancient times to Abraham, they celebrate those days. They might celebrate in different ways, but they celebrate those days. So,
although all three of them come from the Abrahamic, Abraham is the source. They are the religions that fight the most right now, each other. Right in that.
Right in the same place, also.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're all related. The Jews, the Christians, the Muslims, they're all related.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all refer back to Abraham, who's the father, right? But it's amazing how things develop over time, and it's because they don't have bona fide gurus. If they had bona fide gurus, they wouldn't act like that. But they're misled. People, the mass of people are misled, and instead of being brothers, they become enemies. It's unbelievable, unbelievable.
Like, imagine like continuously killing animals. Like, where is the compassion? How would they have compassion to begin with? So that naturally, progresses towards even.
Demoniac. It's demoniac. Yeah. And this one lady who's working in this company, and she had a uh, co-worker, not a lady, it was a man, and he had a co-worker that was a Muslim, and another co-worker was what? Not sure, Christian. Anyway, when the Muslim um, celebration took place, the Muslim was telling this uh, co-worker what a wonderful ceremony they had, and they killed so many animals and ate them, and then this other person who was not a Muslim, was it a Christian or something, I forget now. I forget. Anyway, the thing is that the co-worker got confused because the Muslim is saying the more animals we killed, the more God was pleased, and another person was saying the more we restrained from eating meat, the more God was pleased, or something like that. Right? So then the person got confused. So what's going on here? One is saying the more animals we killed, the more God was pleased. The other one is saying that the more we prayed and did not kill animals, God was pleased. So it's difficult to be God. It's difficult to be God because you know he's faced with all these what you would call anomalies or
Dualities.
yeah, dualities.
But for an animal level, Maharaj, is very common sense. They face pain. It's very common sense. We should not give pain
Yeah.
rather than
Definitely.
killing in a huge number.
No, but this is because the Christians and the Muslims do not
Think that they
say
have soul, right?
animals have a soul.
But they have pain. Like if you try to kill, they run away. They cry and they have pain. They have clear symptom.
Yeah. Well, to nowadays, yeah, in some cases you see the animal actually being killed, but nowadays people don't see the animal being killed. Right? They
You
they
just go to the store.
they don't go to the slaughterhouse. Yeah. If you went to the slaughterhouse, you would never eat meat again. Because there you actually hear the animal screaming, you know. And you have to be a special type of person to work in a slaughterhouse.
Not easy, I guess. Like whoever is working,
You have blood all over your clothes all the time, They're killing large numbers of cows, different animals, and the animals are screaming. You know, it's it's horrible. I've never been in a slaughterhouse, but you read about it. Once you look, see if that's true. That in the slaughterhouses, the animals actually scream.
Yeah, they would, right?
Yeah, they basically put them upside down, tie their feet, put them upside down. They cut their throat. Now, why did he do that? Because in the Bible it says that even if there's one drop of blood in the flesh of the animal, one will go to hell. So they have to bleed the animal. And they tie the legs of the animal and put them upside down. They cut their throat. And all the blood has to come out. Now, all the blood is never going to be completely out. And in the Bible, it says, even one drop of blood, you die. You'll be cursed. So they do everything possible to get as much blood out of the animal as possible.
Yeah, so the animals in slaughterhouses can exhibit distress and some may vocalize, including many making sounds that resemble screaming. The experiences and behaviors of animals in these environments can vary depending on factors such as the type of animal, method of slaughter, and the handling procedures. In many modern slaughterhouses, efforts are made to minimize the pain and distress of animals going through the methods of stunning, rendering the animal unconscious before slaughter. However, even with regulations aimed at humane treatment, conditions can still lead to stress, fear, and pain. Animals may vocalize.
Now, if you eat an animal that is, dies in pain and stress, there's a curse that comes with it. The animal curses the person that eats the flesh. Of course, people don't understand that.
Okay.
Any questions? Any questions?
Hare Krishna, any questions online or comments? On Monday morning.
Haribol. Thank you. All voice of Prabhupada ki jai. Haribol.